Hello, Rebels! Dustin and I are back to answer another commonly asked question, which is, what was your first paranormal experience? I had two that happened fairly young. One I don't remember at all. I'll get into that. And the other, I don't really know what to make of it. When I was 4, my great-grandmother, who we referred to as Gram, passed away. She was on vacation with my grandparents in Newburyport, Massachusetts. Unfortunately, while they were there, she had passed of a heart attack. Now, in those days, God, I feel so old. There were no cell phones. Somehow, my grandmother was able to call my aunt, and my uncle came over to our house to tell my parents. At the time, I had already been put to bed. My mom can't remember if this happened before my aunt told them that Gram passed or after my aunt told them that Gram passed. But I guess I had come downstairs and I asked them, why is Gram in my room smiling at me, saying goodbye? I don't remember this at all. But I guess my mom was so freaked out, she had my dad and my aunt put me back to bed because as far as she was concerned, it was their grandmother. So they were going to be the ones to deal with it. I had no idea this happened until I was in my late 20s. The story just kind of got brought up out of nowhere, and then I asked them why they never told me, and they said they just figured I remembered and didn't want to talk about it. But I don't remember this at all. The second experience, I really don't know what to make of it. It's dream related, but it is connected to the same person. So that's why I find it interesting. This experience happened when I was like 6 or 7. We had just moved into my great-grandmother's house. When she passed, she had actually left it to my dad. My dad allowed his sister and her husband to stay there for a few years, and then when they moved out, we moved in. This house was really, really run down. My great-grandparents had purchased the property and the house in 1926, so my family was there forever. My great-grandparents lived there, my grandmother and her brother grew up there, then my dad and his siblings grew up in the same land right next door, and then I had lived there for 3 years of my life. And when we first moved in, I was terrified of this house. I knew that my great-grandfather had died in it. I knew that my great-uncle had died in it. And I knew it was the last place my great-grandmother lived before she passed. So this place just freaked me out. So one night I had this dream. And in the dream, I woke up in my bed, but everything around me was white, like bright, pure white. And I remember looking out over the end of my bed, and it turned into the kitchen of the house, but it looked like it did when she had lived there. The next thing I know, I'm sitting in her lap. When I was really, really, really little, I vaguely remember sitting in her lap and she'd have her arms around me while we're sitting in a rocking chair, and she'd be knitting while she talked to me. Well, that's what happened in this dream. So I went from in my bed to on her lap in the rocking chair with her. She's knitting like she did when I was a baby. And I remember her saying something along the lines of like, yes, people did die in this house. Yes, it's an old house. But the people who died here, family, they love you. They're looking after you. As long as you live here, you've got nothing to worry about. And it was just the weirdest thing. I remember waking up and it was like a huge weight was lifted off my shoulders. It was this overwhelming feeling too, like an overwhelming positive feeling to that dream. And I had gone into my parents' room. My dad was already out for work. Mom hadn't woken up yet, so I woke her up, and then I started telling her about this dream that I had with Gram. And she remembered the experience from when I was little, so it freaked her out again. But I just took it as a dream because I didn't remember the first experience. When I learned about the first experience, it kind of blew my mind because I remembered the dream so vividly. And as far as my parents and my grandparents said, Gram was the type of person who would show up. So I don't know. I don't know what to think of the first experience because I don't remember it, but it's weird. And as far as the dream, I've had a lot of very strange dreams like that throughout my life. And, I don't know what to make of them. Some people say that spirits have an easier time talking to you in your sleep. I really don't know if there's anything to it, but it was a weird one that still stands out for me to this day. How about you, Dustin? What was your first paranormal experience?
It is interesting, Kris. You just mentioned about how a lot of spirit interaction seems to come in like what I like to call that dreamscape moment, right? Where we're first getting into REM sleep or we're just coming out of REM sleep. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that the world is a little bit quieter for us at that time Because normally there's so much noise and distraction and nonsense going on that I think that if spirit is trying to communicate with us, we are fully just divided. Our attention is just everywhere. So we can't really focus on those type of things, those messages. And I know it is in a lot of different cultures, Native American culture, specifically that moment of interaction going in and out of dreams is so very sacred. And so I think there is something to be said for that. Now, in terms of my first paranormal experience, that comes when I was 9 years old, and I was living in a house in Providence, Rhode Island, and I had no experiences up to this point. I did have an interest in Halloween and ghost stories and those kind of things, but I never went out investigating or anything. I was a kid, and I was in my bedroom one night, and I just noticed all of a sudden things just seemed very different. Felt a little strange. I remember hearing something that kind of piqued my attention, and as I scanned across the room, I remember seeing just there in the doorway this tall, shadowy figure. And I felt very cold, and I felt very scared, and I just kind of stared at it. And it had no facial features. We talk about shadow figures now. There's so many different classifications. These would be what we would refer to as the humanoid type. So they're usually 6.5 feet tall or 2.5, 3 feet tall. The outline of a human, but no facial features, no discerning features. And it just terrified me. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know why it was there. I remember just pulling the covers up over my head and saying every prayer that I learned in school. I just wanted this thing to go away. Now, my parents are awake. They're at the end of the hallway. If I could yell or scream or something, they could come to help. But I really felt as if I was just paralyzed in this moment and that there was nothing else that I could do about it. If you've never seen a shadow figure, maybe you've gone to a gas station on a very hot day and you see the vaporous, the vapors come up over the tanks in the ground. Or if you've seen Predator, the movie Predator, when it goes invisible, it's got that wavy kind of see-through appearance. That's what it looked like to me. But I remember finally, when I was brave enough to pull the covers down, it was gone. And night after night, I continued to look for it. I kept thinking it's going to be there again, but it was never there. But it kind of planted that seed in my head. I wanted to know more about it. I wanted to know why it was there, why it came to visit me, and what it was all about. And that started the quest, and I'm still looking.
Thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And if you have a question you'd like us to answer, please leave it in the comments below.